Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pallavito. I'll be your moderator for today's show. In today's show, we're going to look at some breaking news out of Washington, D.C. relating to your health, especially some of the political aspects that are going on, the appointments that are going on, and who's managing our health system. With that, we're going to bring back the star of our show, the Honorable Dr. Michael Patmos, who is actually a real physician, unlike some of the people that we see that manage our medicine. And he's also board certified in internal medicine. So he's going to bring us up to date with what's going on in Washington, D.C. and what's the latest and greatest news for our health.
Well, good morning, Nick. Good morning, everybody. Yes, there's a lot going on right now. Dr. Casey Means, who is the Trump nominee for Surgeon General, her nomination appears to be stalled. She had a testimony before the Senate that it didn't go well. She couldn't answer basic questions about medicine and like why should babies get hepatitis B vaccination and so forth. And so her nomination is stalled. She may not get appointed. Trump has already opined yesterday or the day before that there are other great candidates, but they're pushing to have her vote be done quickly. So we'll see whether or not she gets in. The interesting thing is that it's become very clear that Dr. Means is not fully trained. She never finished her residency. She quit her residency just a few months before completing it. So people are saying, well, how can a doctor who never finished training and doesn't have a license, doesn't practice medicine, ever be appointed Surgeon General? Well, that's a very appropriate question, because the reality is Trump has appointed lots of doctors who aren't fully trained to various important positions. For example, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, director of NIH and now interim director of CDC, never did an internship, a residency, a fellowship, has no license, is not board certified, has never practiced medicine, doesn't have hospital privileges, has no did not complete clinical training that a physician is required to complete, yet he's in charge of the Center for Disease Control. Dr. Robert Malone, which is going to be the main topic of my points today, my comments today, has 1 year of internship, never completed a residency, is not board certified or board eligible, doesn't have hospital privileges, doesn't have clinical experience. How is he qualified to tell the United States what we should do about vaccines? Well, guess what? The biggest news is Dr. Malone is out. And here's how it happened. For those of you who follow this, a couple of weeks ago, a federal court in Massachusetts, Judge Brian Murphy, ruled that on a lawsuit brought by multiple medical organizations, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Physicians, the Infectious Disease Society of America, the Society for Epidemiology. These major medical groups brought a lawsuit against Robert Kennedy, and that lawsuit prevailed. The judge basically threw out all of the recommendations made by the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. He issued a stay, basically saying that those guidelines cannot be implemented. He further ruled that the committee was appointed illegally in violation of federal rules on how to appoint a committee, that the prior members of the ACIP were fired inappropriately and replaced by unqualified people. In fact, in an illegal process. In fact, the judge said that all of the members of the CDC ACIP are, quote, distinctly unqualified. And he went on to specifically name Dr. Robert Malone as, quote, lacking qualifications and experience, end quote. That is stunning and shocking to many, many people. And here's why. Robert Malone has for 5 years pretty much held the de facto title of heavyweight champion of the world for messenger RNA vaccines. And here's the reason why. He has stated from the beginning that he invented the mRNA vaccine and DNA vaccines. It says so right on his CV. By the way, his CV is available publicly. Just go on Google, type in Robert Malone CV the thinking conservative. It's on, he has it labeled that. You can pull up his CV. It's plastered everywhere on the internet. And in his CV, he makes it very clear. He invented these vaccines. Well, actually, he didn't. But that's what he says on his CV. Well, that has been put out there. That has been, without being fact checked, that has been repeated, put everywhere all over the world, and accepted as fact. So Dr. Malone enjoys this unique position as being what he describes as the most knowledgeable person in the world on this topic. And many millions of people around the world believe that. So he's held this position as being the ultimate authority, knows more than even the people who won the Nobel Prize for mRNA, which he feels and has stated that he should have gotten. So imagine the shock that he felt and that his supporters and his followers feel when a judge comes along and says he lacks qualifications and experience to advise on vaccines. What? How can that be? How can Dr. Malone, who is the expert, the most qualified person in the world, lack qualifications? It doesn't add up. So Malone went on the Aaron Siri podcast. Aaron Siri is a lawyer who does vaccine lawsuits, friend of Bob Kennedy. And Malone did a 2-hour interview with Siri, and he railed against this judge. It's clear that he is very, very offended that his qualifications were diminished or demeaned. He said the judge defamed him, and he talked about wanting to sue the judge and so forth. And he said the judge never even asked for my CV. He based it all on an article that was in the New York Times. Well, no, actually, if you read through the judge's, the court proceedings, the judge had everybody's, all members of the ACIP. He has all of their backgrounds, their documents. Malone's CV is publicly available. His qualifications and credentials are posted right on the HHS website, CDC website, and so forth. So it's very easy to see what Malone's qualifications are and what they aren't. And the judge, looking through his qualifications, came to the conclusion that he's not qualified. And Malone is really hot about that. But rather than put his CV under the microscope in a court of law to be vetted, he has chosen to simply run away and hide. He resigned from the ACIP rather than expose his CV to scrutiny. And this is personally very gratifying for me, because I have been concerned for the past 5 years that Dr. Malone's CV contains content that cannot be verified. I have tried to the best of my ability, using all my due diligence through Google searches, artificial intelligence searches, searching the Medline, all the various publication databases, trying to find proof to support the claims that Dr. Malone has on his CV. And I'm not a professional at this, but I can't find evidence to support much of what is in his CV. And I would think that it would be really very appropriate to put his CV into a court of law for vetting by real experts who can actually determine if these things on the CV are factual or not. I don't know. I have concerns about them. They seem like it's hard to verify. Let me give you one graphic example. On Dr. Malone's CV, he states that he was appointed founder and director of the gene therapy program at UC Davis from 1994 to 1997. Well, that's a very lofty position, founder and director of gene therapy. Here's where it kind of is odd. He had only done an internship when he was named founder and director of a program. He didn't even complete a pathology residency. He did an internship and 1 year of research. And he said that after that, he was appointed founder and director. That's highly unusual for a major academic medical center to appoint someone founder and director of a major program who never even finished their training. It's just it's something I can't find proof. There's no mention anywhere in the UC Davis archives of having a formal gene therapy program in 1994 to 1997. I have checked all the local media, Sacramento Bee, California newspapers, from contemporaneously covering that time period, no mention of a gene therapy program at UC Davis. So I even contacted the gene therapy program at UC Davis, Dr. Jan Nolta, who is the founder and director of the program, and she said the program was founded in 2020. She had never heard of Dr. Malone and wasn't aware of any such program existing at that time. So there are things like that on his CV, many of them, not just that, but there's many things on his CV that if you go and you try to find independent supportive evidence for, you can't find it. And for that reason, beside the fact that he has 1 year of internship, not board eligible, not board certified, no clinical experience, no hospital privileges, that is the reason why the judge decided that Dr. Malone is distinctly unqualified, lacks qualifications and experience, and was appointed improperly. And then argue it rather than say, well, no, it's not true. Let's go get into the details here. Malone has chosen to cut and run and to quit ACIP. I think that's very telling. If any other physician, if someone were to challenge my CV, my CV is accurate, 100% accurate. I would defend it. I would provide the documentary evidence to support it. If I claimed that I was appointed, a clinical assistant professor of medicine, I have the letter of that appointment. If I claimed I was appointed a director, I would have the letter and show it. That's what needs to be done with Dr. Malone's CV. And so it's very interesting that he chose to quit rather than fight. And I think it raises even more concerns about his qualifications. One final point. If this judge determined that Malone lacks qualifications and experience, and that there's something about it, some issues with his CV, Dr. Malone has gotten employment with the federal government based on that CV. Dr. Malone has gotten grants from the federal government based on that CV. Dr. Malone has testified in court as an expert witness in the matter of, in one case, for example, in the matter of U.S. Navy SEALs versus Biden administration, as an expert witness, proffering that CV as proof of his qualifications. Well, if the judge has ruled that he doesn't have sufficient qualifications and experience, that raises questions about all those other roles that he has used or he has obtained, upon which he relied upon that CV for proof. So there's a lot more that needs to be done about this. Primarily, what needs to be done is Dr. Malone's CV needs to be independently fact-checked and verified and vetted by true experts at determining someone's background. I'm not saying his CV is false. I'm just saying there are questions about it that I can't, as a layperson, a lay physician, I can't validate. Someone who is an expert needs to do this. It's imperative because this man has influenced opinion worldwide, globally, and he has influenced U.S. policy. Most people now will not accept the mRNA vaccine because of the things that Dr. Malone has said. If he's not qualified, then those things that he has said are wrong, and he has wrongly influenced the public. This is not the end of it. His running away and hiding in his Substack and on X is not the end of this. His qualifications need to be shown under a bright light to be exposed under a bright light. We need to know what is actually true on his resume and what is fluff. And that's my comments for today. Big news.
That is big news. Good. That is big news. When it comes to resume fraud, it just reminds me in football, there was a guy named George Leary who was the coach of Georgia Tech. And then what happened, he was fired because he had claimed to have graduated from college and he didn't. Okay. But this happens in sports where somebody will make a claim on their resume that they received a degree from a university, and then later on, somebody will find out, no, you didn't. Now, they fired him because of resume fraud. But if you think about it, really getting a degree in sociology from New Hampshire University or wherever he went, what does that have to do with being a good football coach or not? It doesn't. In other words, he was a good football coach at Georgia Tech. He just lied on his resume, and for that, he was fired. Okay. So
I have
looking
statistics. I have statistics.
On
I
resume?
asked AI.
I mean,
AI studies show that a significant fraction of CVs, often cited between 30 and 50%, contain exaggerations, embellishments, or outright lies. Some surveys indicate that up to 70% of workers admit to lying on their resumes. So one of the most amazing numbers when I think of this stuff is Wilt Chamberlain claimed to have slept with 50,000 women, which is 3 different women a day for 20 years. That's impossible. How would he even do that?
Why would he put it on his resume?
Well, maybe he was looking for a job in the adult film industry, Dr. Patmos, and so that would have been a
I think he did bad math. I think he took one of his
or his
best
math
weeks.
could be off. Right. His math could be off, but it does bring up the whole issue of resume fraud. Usually, when you're a professional, you're hopefully, and we broadcast on LinkedIn, as you know, hundreds and thousands of people watch us on LinkedIn, and I'm embellishing it, but it's between hundreds and thousands, depending. But a lot of these people, when you would think after a while, they would not engage in embellishment and resume fraud. But and when does the line move from puffing to embellishment to fraud? In other words, there's a line there to a certain extent, and all of a sudden you frauded somebody. And the fraud, at least in Larry's case, was he graduated from a university he just didn't. Malone claiming to, quote, invent the mRNA vaccine when he didn't, and his name was attached to a paper, could move the line all the way to resume fraud. In other words, the real question is, where does that line move?
In defense of Dr. Malone, he did do significant research when he was a student in a lab from his mentors around. He actually did bench research and contributed to the process. He solved some problems in the process that made it work better. So he deserves credit for what he did, which was not insignificant. But where there are issues on his CV that I can't validate is the appointment as founder and director of gene therapy program at UC Davis. There was no gene therapy program at UC Davis during the time he claims that he founded and directed it. If that's an embellishment, it's more than embellishment, because I think it's a fabrication, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure. Someone who's there must be, forensic experts who verify credentials. Some expert at this needs to tear apart Dr. Malone's CV and verify what is true, what is fluff, and what is made up.
Yeah, but there's somebody at UC Davis that knows or should have known whether or not they had a program back in the 70s or 80s, and whether or not
1994.
1994. There should be somebody at UC Davis who knows or should have known about the program, or whether or not he really was the founder and director.
Well, I contacted her. That's Dr. Jan Nolta. She's the chairman of the department. She's the founder and director. She never heard of Malone and said she started the program in 2020. There was a nascent program in 2008, but Malone left there in 1997. So I can't find evidence of it. And, I think it's important. I think the public needs to know if that CV is fluff.
Well, then shouldn't the burden of proof be on him to show evidence that he was the founder and director? Because right now there is no evidence that shows, according to your statement, because it was in 2020.
I can't find it,
and no one can find it, and he's claimed to be. And why? You also got to get, why would a person like him make things up? In other words, does he have some mental issues? I mean, he's making up stuff that just doesn't exist.
I don't know. I can answer that, but Mark had a question.
I don't know either. Yeah, Mark.
I had a question for you that has nothing to do with Malone, but it's something that I've been hearing people talk about. But it is a medical question, and all along those lines, because I'm hearing of this new strain of COVID that's out there and everything along those lines. So is this something that people should be concerned about? I think it's BA something or along those
Yeah.
lines, but they're saying that it's something that is out there, and I'm just wondering how much should people be concerned about it, or we got enough? Because I've heard people talking about immunity in the sense that we've gotten enough people that have been infected and or have had a vaccine, so therefore it's not as bad of a problem COVID is. So I just wanted your take on this new strain and whether we should be worried about it.
Yeah, I think we should be worried about it because here's the important point. There are millions of people in the United States who are hosting this virus. A virus doesn't exist, in thin air. It doesn't exist. It exists only in the people who have the virus. That virus, the COVID virus, exists because human beings house it. We welcome it. Think of it as we're like a host. We're like a hotel.
Right.
Each of us is a hotel, and we're welcoming this guest to stay in our hotel. So the virus exists because it's being hosted by human beings. And within those human beings, the virus is reproducing constantly like a Xerox copier. And every so often, it spits out a crinkled copy. And if you get enough crinkled copies, pretty soon you get a different document. If you spit out enough altered, mutated pieces of virus, sooner or later you get a new virus. That's what a mutant is. That's what a variant is. That's what a new strain is. Now, most of the times, those variants are not more infectious than the previous one, but it's only a matter of random chance. Eventually, one of these infected people is going to spit out a virus that is more deadly than a previous one, and that could start a whole big problem. This new strain, it may be more pathogenic. It's too soon to tell. But the important point is recognizing that there is a reservoir of people who serve as a host for the virus. And the important point is we want to diminish the size of that reservoir, because the fewer people who host the virus, the fewer copies and the fewer mutations, and the lower the likelihood of a bad variant coming out. The bigger the reservoir, the more the problem. Where we went wrong with COVID in the beginning, and this is Trump's fault, was we allowed the reservoir to get big because we took the controls off. We took off all of the infection control measures, and we allowed Malone and others to discourage vaccination. And that encouraged infection, which made the reservoir bigger, which means there's more people hosting the virus. And we still have millions of Americans hosting the virus and churning out copies. Now, it is true, most people have either been vaccinated or had the virus, so we do have some immunity, and that's why it's been the death rate hasn't been as high recently. But that could all change when someone just happens to cough out the next bad variant, which inevitably it will.
Hey, just really quick, a follow-up question, because I did see Rick's hand as well and everything like that. But how does one know when they are a host? Because I know I was at an event and everybody it might have even been a family event, was saying that they had the experience of having COVID over the last couple of years and everything like that. And they were detailing their experiences. And then I think they asked me, have you had it? And as far as I know, I haven't. And then they all looked at me like, maybe you're the host and everything like that. So how does one?
You can get a test. They used to be free. Now they're like $5. You get them on Amazon. They deliver it overnight. Right now, we've got a kind of a respite from COVID, at least in the western half of the U.S., where the numbers are very low. We're moving towards summer, which is a good time for low COVID numbers because people are outside more and not spreading it inside. But even so, I just got boosted a couple days ago because I'm going to be around a bunch of possible knuckleheads in the next few weeks, and I want some protection. And I got the Novavax, which is a slightly different kind of vaccine because I heard it was better, but then I looked at the statistics. They're all pretty good. Then I looked up one more thing, which is myocarditis and pericarditis, which is you get the vax and your heart hurts a little bit because the sac around your heart has been a little irritated. So they studied this in 40,000 people who got the vax. 6 people, that is a little more than 1 in 10,000, had some chest pain after getting the vax. Then I looked up the incidence of myocarditis in the general population, double that rate annually. So just without taking any vax, double that number of people in any given year will have, I used to get, well, I do, every time I drive Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, I get heart pain because it's a very it's curvy. People drive crazy, and it makes my heart hurt.
So, two comments, Mark. You're right. You sometimes you don't know if you're a host. If you're asymptomatically infected, you could be a host. You could be making virus and spreading virus, infecting and killing other people. And you have no idea you're doing it. But if you're symptomatic and you get tested, then you'll know. So that. Rick is right about that. As far as pericarditis and myocarditis, it's like people just discovered this. Pericarditis and myocarditis are very well-known entities. In fact, about 2 to 3% of all presentations to the emergency room with people with chest pain are pericarditis, myocarditis. I've seen it hundreds of times in my career. You diagnose it. It's very simple to diagnose it, and it actually responds really well to Advil, ibuprofen, and rarely is it life-threatening. It can be, but rare. It can be associated with mRNA vaccination in extremely low numbers. If you fear pericarditis, then fear the virus. That's much more likely to give you pericarditis and myocarditis than the vaccine is. The vaccine-related myocarditis is mild and transient. There have been literally a handful of cases of people who suffered bad outcomes from it out of millions and millions and actually billions of doses. So it is vanishingly rare. If you fear the spike, fear the virus. The virus has the spike, and you get much more spike with a viral infection than you do with the vaccine. Fear the spike, fear the virus.
Well, also, 99% of Americans have antibodies to COVID in their blood, which means either they had COVID or they had the vax or both. And that, I asked my doctor, I just got my annual checkup. Way fewer people are dying of COVID. And I asked, is this because the strains are less severe or because everybody has antibodies? And he said, probably the latter.
Yeah, we're developing herd immunity, and it's a result of infection and a result of immunization. But remember, 1.2 million people died before we had immunity. Now, the immunity that we have in the population now is, directed at prior variants of the virus. A new virus could very well emerge from those who are infected that will be worse. In fact, it's a probability that eventually it will.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We're wrapping up Nick, and everything, but I'm just going to tease you because we have this new feature that Dr. Patmos can use and everything like that, which is a poll. It's in their widgets and everything like that. So actually, that's
lies on your resume?
And it's everything. How many lies on your resume? Never. It's all lies. Half of it is lies, or a quarter of it is lies. So you can create a poll on the network now as well. So you got
my resume is very deceptive on LinkedIn, where I've been a nude art model for decades. I did that, and I worked at dozens of colleges. So I listed all the colleges, and I said, I've been naked here, I've been naked here, I've been naked here. And I put the logo of the college next to every place I've been naked. And people who aren't really paying attention, they see this list of colleges and they think I'm the world's most amazing professor. And it's no, read the resume. I was standing there naked for art students.
Well, that's very interesting, and so is the show. And we'd like to thank Dr. Patmos, who's board certified in internal medicine, bringing us
my resume is true.
Bring us a real doctor who's bringing us information from Washington, D.C., and hopefully we'll get better leaders in our health community. And we want to thank our viewers in the United States and around the world watching Pod TV's Medicine and Science. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Peace, bro.